coming to you. We're going to get things started off here with Joseph Peo versus Blake Madson, and it is going to be a matchup of two classic modern decks, as we said, Scam and Zoo, Domain Zoo. So this is round 9 of 9 here at the 10K Modern Showdown NRG Championship Series in Minneapolis. We appreciate all of you sticking along with us, myself, Corbin, and my partner here today, Devin, as we bring you down the home stretch. Everyone, we appreciate if you can click that follow button on Twitch. We've been getting towards we're very close to a milestone, I know. So if we can get that follow button, that's right. We appreciate that as these players shuffle up. We've got some excellent magic to give you down the stretch here, including the quarterfinals and the semifinals of this tournament before we turn things over to the crew tomorrow for that championship finals.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the follow button. You know, it doesn't cost you anything. That one's totally free. All you got to do is scroll down and click that little purple heart next to the thing that says follow. So do us a big favor. We are trying to get to 20,000 followers. And if you could help us achieve that goal, that would be fantastic. As we see here, like you mentioned, we have Joseph Pio on the left with Domain Zoo, Blake on the right, who we just saw last round on Rakdos Scam. As far as the matchup is concerned, I think there's a bit of play here. I'm pretty sure that the most important cards in this matchup are from Joseph's side of things, and they are Leyline of the Guild Pact and Scion of Draco. Where if you we're looking at Blake's deck list, traditionally a lot of removal spells, Terminates, Lightning Bolts, Fatal Pushes, but none of that stuff is pretty good against the 4/4 Hexproof, Lifelink, Vigilance, Flying, Trample, Rampage 2, Banding, Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we'll have to see if Joseph has that ley line.
All right, well, mulligan's down. Looks like coast is clear. Ley line check, no ley line in play. And Thoughtseize is going to reveal it all. Ragavan, Nacatl, Leyline Binding, 2 lands. Now, that's some pretty good cards, and a card that was once banned in Modern for being too powerful.
You mean Wooded Foothills?
That's the I mean our boy the cat there. Zoo is a fun deck. Then this is an interesting start though, right? Because now the Leyline Binding has given all these decks a different sort of angle. But yeah, no Leyline, no Scion, no broken starts from either player. I mean, just a Thoughtseize, not even a scammed out grief or anything like that.
Yeah, this is a typical play pattern that you would see maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Just turn one Thoughtseize, take your Wild Nacatl. We don't see any ley lines, no grief scams, and Joseph is going to go ahead and deploy the wildest of Nacatls, as you mentioned, once banned in Modern. I think that the power creep has maybe passed it by a little bit, but we do still see Joseph sporting 4 copies. I mean, if you need a 1-drop, you can do worse than Wild Nacatl.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 3/3 very reliably, and in a format where everyone's just trying to dump their hands early now and kind of burn all their cards, and then it's just whatever's left over. Mana efficiency comes at a premium, and a 1 mana for a 3/3 is pretty good. And it's kind of like, Tarmogoyf at 2 mana is sometimes that. It kind of comes in and out of flavor these days in Modern, but sometimes you just want the biggest thing left over. And when you're an aggro deck, the biggest thing is sometimes a 1 mana 3/3.
Yeah, we see Blake go ahead and deploy a Grief and a Not Dead After All. Probably drew one of those. Not sure which one that was the draw, but you would imagine if that was available on turn 1, that probably would have happened. Yeah. So is able to deploy the Grief, and then we also have a Fatal Push for the Ragavan. So Joseph going to be facing down a 4/3 Menace with only a 3/3 and 1 card left over. We'll have to see what Blake's leftovers are. But yeah, Joseph definitely behind at this current stage.
All right. Next step for for Blake is to attack. And I was going to say, Devin, what do you want to do now if you are Joseph? You haven't had your aggressive start. Like, how do you try to navigate uphill? Are you just looking for creatures? Are you looking for burn spells? How do you try to draw out of this with a domain deck in this spot?
I was gonna say Leyline Binding is probably Joseph's best card here, but there are two copies in the graveyard, and
Yeah.
not likely to draw that, but does pick up a copy of Inti, which, if there are no removal spells here for Blake, is going to let that Wild Nacatl discard that last card, which I believe was a Stubborn Denial, maybe
Mhm.
convert that into another point of power on the Nacatl, as well as a card from exile. But Blake says, not so fast, as we fetch before the combat phase. Maybe just I'm not sure. We want to take a look at the top card before we decide if we want to cast a removal spell. But yeah, it looks like Joseph did not find that Leyline Binding.
What a grindy little matchup already on turn 2, right? Turn 3. Everyone's just hands depleted, couple creatures in play. All right, Fatal Push on the Nacatl. Is that leaving Inti in play then? With Grief untapping. It's just a land. Sorry, land. 3 lands in play for Blake. Didn't catch what he drew there.
Yeah, that was kind of an interesting decision here for Blake, whether to kill the Wild Nacatl or the Inti,
Yeah,
where if you kill the Nacatl, you're kind of saving yourself more life that turn in the short term. But if the game isn't over in the next couple of turns, you are giving Joseph more looks at cards with that Inti. So
just like
and
this.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. This Ragavan coming off the top. Now you see this is gonna get to a classic limited race here where we have a 4-3 versus a
yeah.
3-3 and a
All right.
2-1. So I mean Joseph is ahead in that race with Blake at 7. So Blake's gonna need something off the top here.
I think I caught a not dead after all. Speaking of limited, maybe we're on the block. Uh, reanimate my creature plan. This is definitely an interesting spot, that's for sure. NT is a powerful addition, by the way. Kind of goes unheralded. It's just a sort of the 2-drop that fits into some of these domain decks. It doesn't necessarily draw the headlines, but it's been a really powerful piece in every deck it's slotted into across formats.
Yeah, only Joseph only choosing to play one copy of Inti this weekend. It is a legendary creature, and there are some other 2-drops here: Nishoba Brawler, Sign of Draco, Territorial Kavu. So you
Hmm.
can only have room for so many 2-drops. But the one copy of Inti showing up, and it's
Yeah.
really really good here for Joseph. Like you said, just making sure the cards keep flowing and all of that stuff, and just going to go into the red zone. It looks like what you described is going to be the lineup here, Joseph. Attacking here, and it looks like Blake has decided we're going to leave the grief on defense too. Oh, that's the third
Wow.
binding.
What
Wow.
a rip. Amazing draw there, because now your lose my creature in combat and reanimate trick doesn't work when Leyline Binding just exiles it from play entirely. Now that's not at all where you want to be, and now a grief gets exiled. Uh, so you can't even set up a scam with that one. Oh wow, Joseph Feo is with Domain Zoo, just an Inti kind of leading the way here in this late game, providing a lot of value. And now look at this, just taking over.
Yeah, that one drawing the one copy of Inti and then just hitting the third leyline binding to just the perfect setup here. And if that leyline binding was not found, you could see Blake trade for the Inti or the Ragavan, not it after all to go ahead. We're gonna guess the
There we go.
information Thoughtseize at one life. You'll have to see it. And that's gonna be Joseph taking down game number one. Grief scam, not quite good enough.
Yeah, nice match there. That was really kind of back and forth, and a good one to open things up, because this is Rakdos. You can be sure gets a lot better after Sideboard as it gets to tailor its deck to what it's playing against, and that is exactly what Blake Madson is going to be doing, looking across the field at Zoo against those early creatures, and looking at this sideboard here of quite a few options. What do you like here if you're Blake?
So Blake's going to want to look at his sideboard, thumb through, and find anything that says destroy target creature. So probably they're going to go to head towards the copies of Legion's End. The engineered
Hmm.
explosives can even take out multiple creatures. So those seem to be pretty slam dunks. Maybe the Angrath's Rampage to be able to make Joseph sacrifice an artifact, Scion of Draco. And then past that, you maybe want to go towards the mood effects because the domain deck is a 5-color deck, right? You're operating on ideally Triome into Shockland to be able to set up your powerful plays like Nishoba Brawler, Territorial Kavu, and Scion of Draco, and Blood Moon pretty good against that setup. So I think that's what Blake's looking at.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And meanwhile, on the other side, if you are looking to kind of work your way through all of that with Joseph's Domain Zoo deck here, you've got options, right? You obviously have you picked up that game. You didn't have to have the Leyline Scion combo that has been so powerful. So that's something that's always available to you. But now you get the option to dig into the sideboard here, pick up some of these reactive spells, and try to interact with what's coming your way.
Absolutely. So Joseph probably wants to go towards the 3 copies of. Well, I don't know if you want all 3 copies, but Pick Your Poison is pretty good against Scam, especially if you expect those Blood Moons to be coming in, which
Hmm.
they're probably going to be there. And it also can kill Fable the Mirror Breaker. So maybe wants to go towards a couple of those, perhaps not all 3. Dramoka's Command is kind of an interesting one in that
What I was
same
thinking
vein,
about.
where
Yeah.
you can make them sacrifice an enchantment, perhaps fight an early Ragavan. That could be pretty good. Wear Tear. So Joseph is not short on ways to remove Blood Moon from the battlefield, and maybe has correctly identified that to be one of the problematic areas for his deck list. Past those, though, I mean, Needle, Alpine Moon, Deflecting Palm, Surgical. Those, I mean, I guess you could Surgical against Grief, against the Not Dead, but the
Hmm.
issue with that line is they just take the Surgical with the Grief. So I don't know if I like that as much.
Yeah, the Dramoka's command I thought was also interesting because we mentioned how those games kind of devolved into just sort of this weird little limited looking battlefield. And yeah, Dramoka command is pretty good in that sense. So you can make them sacrifice an enchantment and fight. You got some options. But yeah, you also have the option of just doing a lot of damage, right? We didn't call attention to that because we didn't see it come up. But Joseph's deck can get some early damage in. And if the Rakdos scam deck does damage to itself, which it obviously does, those tribal flames can also just go upstairs. The really old school limited, sorry, not old school domain zoo endings of 5U 5U GG is still something that's on the board here, even with all the sort of the new technology and modern improvements of these. Oh, look at my 2 drop! It has every keyword you could imagine and then some. It's just catch tribal flames.
Corbin, you and I, we like to talk about and maybe reminisce over the old days. I remember back in my day when
Oh yeah,
you couldn't play triomes. You had to wait until you had 3 lands to get 5 types off of those shock lands. We were
true.
playing with step links and all of this kind of stuff. Sometimes played a GOP, and I'm
Played
not
a
trying to
GOP,
date
yes.
myself, but we didn't have Ragavan. We'll just say that.
Oh, those were good times, but like that's what I love about modern is because if you ask someone what the golden age of modern was, you get a different answer from
Come
everybody.
on,
And for
Norm. Come
some
on.
people, this is a fun part of modern. This is a great time, what we've got going on right now. If you enjoy at least some of the deck diversity that we've seen going around, and look, if Wild Mikado is playable in a format, it can't be that bad, huh? We've seen some great, fun matchups throughout the day today.
I just wanted to say, producer, if you're going to put up Plate of GP, you could have at least put up the Zendikar one. I'm just going to throw that out there. But we see Ragavan getting into the red zone here after a Angrath Rampage taking care of Wild Nicodle. That's going to find a land, and that treasure is going to cast Thoughtseize. So phenomenal start here for Blake. And I even saw a copy of Blood Moon. So this is kind of about as good as you could possibly draw it up here as a start for Blake.
Yeah, that's right. And we are off to the races. You said it, Ragavan getting in there. The hand is now known information. Pretty good start if you're Blake. Of course, you're on the draw. That's huge in any format of modern, especially in one where you are really trying to interact over some key 1 mana spells. But this is where you want to be. And now, past the turn, just try to play defense. You're ahead on board with Ragavan, just going to accumulate value every turn it's there. So if you can control Joseph's board, you can just build from there if you're Blake and try to snowball this early advantage to victory.
So we see Joseph going ahead and cracking a Flooded Strand and putting a Kavu into play. And you know what that means? That means a Shockland is coming. Now, like I said, Blake does have that Blood Moon, and I didn't quite get a good look at Joseph's hand to see if we had a basic Plains or a basic Forest. But if we
Oh,
don't have that, the game is probably over.
and there you go. Slams that Blood Moon down before the fetch is even resolved. That's how good it's going to be. And Blake knows that it is probably going to resolve, hit the battlefield, and just take over from there. Territorial Kavu for Joseph is pretty good, but it's not Ragavan. It's not going to make treasure tokens. It doesn't add mana. It's a really, really difficult spot now for Domain Zoo trying to untap and work its way through the dreaded Blood Moon and an old school white bordered one.
Yeah, well, they got some Chronicles, right? If I
Yeah.
remember that correctly. Yeah. So we got some mana being tapped here for Joseph. Ragavan is somewhat decent. does kind of help you fight through Blood Moon a little bit because you can kind of generate some treasures. And funny enough for Joseph, I see 2 more Ragavans in his hand. And interesting enough, we're not going to
We're
discard.
gonna
Okay.
block. That's what we're gonna do. Ragavans are trading in combat.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense because the
Yeah.
Scion's essentially dead in the water, and you want to just keep casting Ragavans. But if we see a Sheoldred, that one's pretty good at blocking Ragavans, so that's the play here for Blake. Going to deal 2 down to Joseph, and with a Blood Moon in play, facing down a Sheoldred, this one, I don't know. I don't know about this one, Corbin.
Yeah, Sheoldred tends to close games out pretty quickly, especially when you can't really cast a lot of spells. And of course, no fear. Block Ragavan, take some damage from the Kavu. No big deal. Because now I untap, I gain life, trigger. This one's going to get closed out pretty quickly by the looks of it. What a really textbook Blood Moon type game here. Show
There's the
you my
Victor
hand of
Poison.
Thoughtseize right before probably we pick them up for the final time here. This one coming quickly to a close with Sheoldred. And now Fable, the Mirror Breaker.
Yeah, Joseph did have the Pick Your Poison, but unfortunately for Joseph, no green mana in sight. And Wild Nacatl, that is going to do it. And we are going to be going to game number 3. Again, this is a very, very tense match. And we do believe that these players are playing for a win and in for our top 8 here.
Mhm.
And we're going to have Joseph on the play. It seems like maybe not the best matchup for Zoo, but it also does kind of seem like it really comes down to play draw.
Yeah, especially if you can get out early, right? If you're able to maybe get that Kavu ahead on board and start generating value and get ahead of the Blood Moon, maybe things are a little different. So we'll see how it goes in this final game here. But obviously, both players are prepared for this. Zoo is a common deck in the format these days, and obviously on the other side, we've seen that before. So we know each player has got a plan, and they're coming in to a third game here with a top 8 on the line. You really can't ask for anything more than that when you sign up for a tournament.
Absolutely. So, yeah, we already took a look at the deck list. I don't know if we can get the slides up for our future events. Well, we have some time to discuss that. But yeah, if you're enjoying what you're seeing so far, maybe head over to Indianapolis on May 11th and May 12th. We have a 10K Modern Showdown on Saturday, as well as a 10K Team Showdown on Sunday. And then I believe if we can get the St. Louis graphic up here for our June event, that's going to be June 22nd and 23rd in St. Louis. We have 10K Pioneer Showdown on Saturday, as well as a 5K Modern Trial on Sunday. So if you're enjoying what you are seeing here and you want to maybe compete and fight for your chance at glory and perhaps your own token, head over to either of these events and we'd love to have you. So with all of that, yeah, this definitely going to be going to game number 3. Joseph on the play. And yeah, I don't know. It kind of depends, like you said, just really what the hands look like. Does Joseph have a 1-drop? Does Blake have that turn 1 grief scam? Is there, a fast Blood Moon? And it really comes down to that. But yeah, we'll have to see exactly what happens. Interesting matchup.
Yeah, that's for sure. And hey, it comes down to the end. And we talked about while we were looking at the matches before we got into this game here. The top 8 is going to be diverse. Whoever ends up making it, it is going to be a wide open, diverse top 8. As we've seen in Modern, we saw a handful of decks that you just kind of don't see at all. And we say, hey, this deck looks like a throwback. So, okay, a throwback. No, it looks like 2024 Modern, where you can play almost whatever you want and have a shot at the top 8. And it helps if you're playing some of the best decks in the format and have mastered them, as Joseph Peo with Domain Zoo and Blake Madson with Rakdos Scam have. And with that, we are off to the races. Turn 1, Ragavan eats a fatal push.
This is kind of what we talked about game 1. Neither player having their broken start. We have no lane line of the Guild Pact here for Joseph and no turn 1 grief scam for Blake. So at least from what we can tell, this seems to be relatively fair magic, depending on your interpretation of Ragavan. But in any case,
Right.
we'll see what 2-drop here. See what 2-drop Joseph has here. I see 2 copies of Tribal Flames. That's a lot of damage upstairs.
It is, especially if Blake ends up fetch shocking once or twice here. It adds up very, very quickly. That said, Joseph might have been counting on that Ragavan to start poking in for some damage. Instead, it goes nowhere. He goes nowhere with his second turn. And now here comes Thoughtseize, which gets a little bit of a frown from Joseph.
Yeah, it's just all burn and a binding. So yeah, not the best type of
13.
hand.
Wow.
The 13. I mean, 13,
Yeah.
2 from the Thoughtseize. Have to imagine, if Blake is planning on fetch shocking, or even if Blake's not, still might want to take one of those tribal flames because you
Yeah.
just don't want to have to worry about dealing with 2 of them later on.
Yeah, like say you take the binding here as you want to resolve the threat. Okay, that's sure fine. You're going to go to 15 off of your Thoughtseizes. There's actually 13 points of burn represented in Joseph's hand right now. So all he really needed was one or two uh, pokes from that Ragavan. Now doesn't get it, and as you mentioned, Blake Madson smartly tosses the Tribal Flames. You know the difference between 8 points of burn and 13 points of burn is vast.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it gives Blake a lot more wiggle room if there's like you said, a shock or maybe another Thoughtseize or taking a hit from potentially a Draco later down the road or something along those lines. And we see Joseph fetching out the Zagoth Triumph. So there is a full domain. So, next turn, if Joseph doesn't find a threat, maybe he wants to try to deploy some of those burn spells. Like, say,
Mhm.
for example, Joseph draws a land, maybe he wants to go Shock in the Red Source pass, or Shock in the Red Source, play the Tribal Flames pass to kind of just start getting that burn out of his hand to kind of avoid getting it Thoughtseized or Grieved. Love it. Take 5. What are you
Wow,
at?
here we go. 5 upstairs. And pass. Okay, and pass. Fetch. Deal yourself some more damage.
Ooh, love to see it. See, we took the Tribal Flames, but then the fetch got us 1/5 of the way there. So one more Thoughtseize and we're golden. Everything's fine.
Yeah, everyone's had that experience of playing a game of Magic where you're playing a really nice deck. You got fancy cards, the latest innovations. All of a sudden, you just get to a point you're like, wow, I just really need a lava spike right now. Right? Like, I should need to deal 3 damage to somebody. And hey, sometimes you have Tribal Flames in your deck. You can do it.
All right, 2-mana dash Ragavan. Ooh, bolting the Ragavan. So we're going to
Oh,
respond. There is a not dead after all. So Ragavan is going to come back with that Wicked Roll token.
that was a huge. The players breezed through that, but that was a huge interaction in terms of where this game goes from that point forward. Because Joseph was just sort of poking away at Blake's life total. Every draw step is an opportunity to draw more burn. There's a Tribal Flames in hand. It looks like,
Oh,
but just being able to protect that Ragavan there gave Blake a path forward and sets the stage for Joseph to have that Leyline binding.
yeah, that was a really interesting exchange because we knew about the binding in Joseph's hand, and Joseph chose to cast the lightning bolt instead of the binding on the
Yeah.
Dash Ragavan. And not only does that walk into Blake's not dead after all, but also Joseph drew the second Tribal Flames. So
Hmm.
imagine if that bolt had gone upstairs, or maybe the binding goes at Ragavan and you still get to keep the bolt in hand to be able to
Hmm.
go upstairs, then
Yes.
you kind of have a lot more outs here for Joseph.
Very well said, because that would make Ragavan an out, a Dash Ragavan, that sort of thing, another Lightning Bolt an out. All very, very relevant points. So, with that said, the state of things as they are now was that put Gigant? What was that?
Gigantha in hand.
Put Gigantha into hand. Okay. Ragavan is exiling land the first time and now Guild Leyline the second time for Joseph. He doesn't want those cards anyways. So 10 life to 5 life. Big draw step here.
Now, what does Joseph draw? Do we find that other copy of Tribal Flames? That is the name of the game here. There are 3 down, so there's only 1 left. Not the
Yeah.
most likely thing to happen, but
Especially if, yeah, I don't know what you trim on, but looks like that's a K command, Kolagon's command, joining Blake Madson's hand over there. So he can sense it, he can feel it. Dashing Ragavan in again, getting these treasure tokens now has access to a lot of mana. It is starting to come down to the wire here. It is closing the door on Joseph Peo. He's going to have to find something off the top
yeah,
this turn,
Joseph.
or very possibly next, or Blake is going to punch his ticket to 8-1 and the top 8.
Yeah, Joseph's going to be looking for. I- Obviously, Tribal Flames is the name of the game here, but even something like a Sign of Draco, which can get out
Mhm.
of range of Fatal Push and Lightning Bolt, that one has to be specifically taken out by a Terminate. So if Blake does not have a Terminate in hand, then Sign of Draco could be a good top deck here for Joseph. See what the draw step. Oh my God! It's the fourth Tribal
Whoa!
Flames.
What a draw there from Joseph, the fourth Tribal Flames. Blake did everything he
Oh,
could to play around it. He even thought seized one away earlier, but Joseph with the top 8 on the line at
oh
the
my
NRG series
God!
finds the Tribal Flames for exactly lethal to Blake Madson. Joseph Peo moving to 8-1 with the victory. What an ending.
Wow. Wow is all I can really say. That was absolutely phenomenal. Joseph just ripping the top of the deck, that fourth copy of Tribal Flames. I know you had I heard you say it. You were like, I don't know if maybe he caught one of those Tribal
Yeah,
Flames. We can confirm. Did not cut a Tribal
it was in the
Flames.
deck.
Yep, all four. You love to see it. So congratulations to Joseph, likely advancing to our top 8 here. I'm going to take a look from the producer to see if we have a backup match for you. But wow, just absolutely wow. That was phenomenal. All right,
Yeah.
and we are ready to go to our backup match. So let us bring you down on the action. I don't know if it's going to be as suspenseful as the fourth Tribal Flames, but we'll do our best. We'll see what we get here for you.
Yeah, that's something to live up to, that's for sure. But here we go. We've got Domain Rhinos and Azorius Control. We got maybe take a break and breathe a little bit here in this one with the control on one side of the field.
Absolutely. So this is yeah, like you said, Domain Rhinos against Azorius Control. Traditionally a matchup that not the best for Domain Rhinos. It used to be a little bit better with the presence of Violent Outburst, but now that that card has been removed from the equation, it's a lot harder for the Rhinos deck to kind of try to fight on the same axis as the blue-white control deck, since
Yeah.
all your Cascade spells are sorcery speed only now. So it's a lot harder to go like that. Everybody had complained about the Violent Outburst force your counter spell, and
Right.
yeah, that did happen a lot in this specific matchup, but now that can't happen anymore.
Yeah, and we've seen we'll get our early fix here, but I think we've seen sort of several blue white players finding success throughout the day because of that.
Absolutely. So we see a heinous preordain. I'm just going to throw that out there. I don't, that's my opinion, but it is preordained for those wondering at home.
I
If
was wondering at home, so
yes,
thank you.
it is a preordain. So yeah, we see a meticulous archive here. I think the player's name might be potentially might be a little off. So let me see if
Yeah,
I
I
can
think we've
just
got to get our overlay fixed here, but
yeah.
we're working our way through that. So we'll have that updated for you all in a second here. So in the meantime, we've got one side just setting up the mana, got the triome, but uh, left side here getting off to a pretty decent start, right? Getting to turn it sideways a little bit, taking the initiative in the matchup to get things rolling. And here we go with more rhinos to join if this resolves.
Well, it's a shardless agent. The cascade is a random mechanic. We don't know what it's going to hit,
Oh,
Corbin.
that's a good
Okay, it
point. My
could be
bad.
random.
I'm sorry.
Wow, it's a crashing footfalls. No way.
I don't want anyone to think that we're watching ahead here, and I know what's coming. I don't know what they're going to hit.
Spoilers.
Yeah.
All right, we see the Rhinos enter the battlefield here for our Rhinos player. Let me just see if I can get the matchup here so we can get names.
Yeah. So, well, this is a pretty impressive field already, as the deck is want to do. So, if you are sitting on the other side here, Blue White, you've got to find an answer as best you can. And the Teferi is nothing but something that's going to try to buy some time. And while it does that very well, it's on the wrong side of the play draw here against the Rhinos.
It's also a whiteboarded Teferi. I'm not gonna make any comments about that.
Hmm. Hmm.
If people want to do what they want to do, that's fine. But we see an attack here for 10 damage. We can clear the Teferi with the Shardless Agent and send 8 damage to the face potentially. And it looks like that is what we are going to do. And now, if you have a Solitude here, do you Solitude the Shardless Agent to protect the Teferi, or do you Solitude? Yeah, looks like we are going to keep that Teferi around. Heads up play here for the control player.
Yeah, I think so. You got to try to find a way to get ahead.
Oh, actually, that's not gonna work, Corbin, because the Shardless Agent has Hexproof from the Scion.
It always gets me, man. It
I
always gets me.
honestly, it got me for a little bit too. I forgot
Hmm.
about that.
Yeah. Well, all right. That doesn't work out.
But we have a
So
verdict.
on
The su-
to the next plan, which is to just clean them up this way.
yeah, Supreme Verdict is gonna clean up the board. So yeah, we'll try to see if we can get the graphic with life totals updated here for a second. We got a hidden with the first Sino Draco hit, and then we get a hidden with 8 last turns, I believe, with 2 fetches. I want to say that would put Garrick down to 8, but we'll have to see if we can get that updated for you here in just a moment. See a fetch land here for Shandi at the end phase. See if we have maybe a subtlety or some other sort of thing to cast. There we go. I was close. I said 8. Garrick said 7. I was pretty close.
You were pretty close. We got there. And here we go. Shandi's going to play out a subtlety to try to get things rolling on the last few points of that. But Garrick, of course, sitting, we know, on the solitude that we already saw. So plenty of options in the hand for how to navigate moving forward wherever we eventually end up. And that is what's going to happen is the solitude is going to just take out pitching a Teferi, take out the creature, and that's that. Board clear.
Absolutely. That was the solitude that we knew about earlier. We suspend a Crashing Footfalls here for Shandi, and let's see if we have any additional follow-up. We do not, so no additional Cascade spells. That means there are no threats here for Shandi, and Garrick just going to go ahead and slam this One Ring, and no Force of Negation here for Shandi either. So this is a really tough spot here for our Rhinos player against a resolved One Ring, and no pressure in play. So yeah, we'll have to see how this game progresses from here. Shandi really needs to find some pressure this turn, and well, we got pressure in 4 turns. Okay,
Okay, well, that's a huge answer there, because if that ring had been able to sort of just sit around for a couple turns, it would have just taken over very quickly, as we've seen it do. So the Leyline Binding at least keeps the game going on in theory, but it looks like, is that Kahira into hand and Kahira into play? All right.
6 mana 3/2.
Sure, why not?
It does close the game out in some sort of fashion. Maybe not the fastest, but the control players, they don't care about fast.
Look, every time I have to type a deck list and I have to type in Kahira next to it, I'm just glad it's at least getting played. All right, just paying that off,
True. All right, we got a Surveyor land here for Shandi. Again, really wants to find some sort of threat. No, Misty Rainforest, not a threat. Take a look and see what the draw step is. Draw step is here. I'm going to get some dice down on those Crashing Footfalls, maybe. To my knowledge, I think that is a trigger that you can miss, but...
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. Garrick has got a handful of cards, but not sure how many of them are relevant. I see 1 counterspell. What land is that underneath the Flooded Strand?
Let me tell you about my best friend.
Is that a
Gaia Reach Sanitarium?
Oh, yes. I didn't want to say it and be wrong. The Sanitarium making an appearance in Modern.
Yeah, this particular blue-white control list is featuring 4, yes, you heard it right, 4 copies of Narset Parter of Veils, and that's why we have the 1 copy of Gaia Reach to kind of lock them out of their draw step, along with 1 singular copy of Days Undoing. So, this is the, I guess this is maybe the degenerate version of blue-white control, as one would say, with the Narset lockout, but depending on how you look at that. So we see a Fire Ace going after a Kahira. Get that thing off the battlefield. But yeah, Gaia Reach Sanitarium, let's do it. Not great when you don't have the Narset, though, because you don't want to... I mean, I guess Shandi has no cards in hand, so it's kind of free to activate, but... See, Garrick fetching twice here, falling down to 4. Have to see.
Yeah, this is definitely kind of a precarious spot here. Those footfalls are, gonna get there eventually, and looks like we're casting a Solitude. Okay.
Yep, Solitude take care of the subtlety. But yeah, like you mentioned, those Rhinos are... One of them's going to be coming off this turn, going to be trading with a Force of Negation. Okay, that's why we had the double fetch, because we needed to fetch lands to be able to cast the Solitude and hold up the Force of Negation. And, well, usually you want it in your opening hand, but do what you got to do here if you're Shandi. Leyline of the Guild Pack. Not the most relevant card. Yeah, interesting, Shandi could have kept that card in hand to potentially discard to the Sanitarium.
Yeah, this is definitely an interesting spot here all around. Here we go. The footfalls coming in. Rhinos hitting play, draw step. I think I saw Garrick with a subtlety, perhaps. So we've definitely got options. This game continues to be really close, all things considered, right here. Garrick going to pull the trigger on a prismatic ending that removes one of the tokens. Oh, wow. And a second one gets rid of the other one. And that's not the cleanest way to answer it in terms of card advantage, but it does clear the way for Solitude to continue the beatdown.
Yep, you do what you got to do, and that Solitude is going to buff Garrick's life total to make sure that now that Garrick is at 10, not even a single Rhino attack will be able to finish Garrick off, going up to 13. And there is a copy of Narset Parter Avail. So we've sort of established a lock here, Corbin. Narset plus Skyreach Sanitarium.
Oh,
Let's just
wow.
make it so they don't get a draw step anymore.
All right. Wow. Just the way they drew it up. Wow, yeah, they really did though, right? Because that's what a neat little interaction. We've seen a lot of these sort of small edges, small combos in modern come up, and it sure did right there. And that helps complete game one victory for Garrick Alford on blue white control, setting himself up very well here in this last round, trying to close out this top eight run.
And yeah, for sure. So I think we are going to go ahead and get deck list up on screen for the backup feature. So we'll start with Shandi. We have Domain Rhino. So looking at the sideboard here for Shandi, we have 3 copies of Endurance, 2 Magus of the Moon, 2 Inevitable Betrayal, 2 Dismember, 3 Mystical Dispute, 2 Force of Vigor, and a Besage. So definitely wants to go towards those mystical disputes. Very, very good at fighting over Teferis and counter spells and all that kind of stuff. Could sell me on Magus of the Moon potentially because you did see quite a quite a few non-basics out of Garrick's deck. They have the leyline binding technology, so has a bunch of triomes and then a bunch of kind of other random lands like Gaia Reach, Manamo, that kind of stuff. So maybe he wants to go towards those, but disputes seem like a slam dunk, and then maybe the endurances as well, just kind of more additional flash threats.
Yeah, both players going to be kind of settling into the interaction battle back and forth, and who can resolve a big one here. So this is going to be the domain rhinos. The thing is, you can always just play your cascade card and put a threat out there and make the opponent interact and begin the whenever you want, right? And that is the strength of it. Whereas on the other side, we can take a look at blue white. You have to have your answers line up in a little more specific way so you don't just get overrun by rhinos and not have a verdict on hand or not have the right answer for it. So that is as we look towards the blue white sideboard here. Garrick will be looking towards his attempts to try to get onto the board, but I don't see a lot more interaction on the board. So where is the interaction going to come from if you're Garrick?
Interaction's probably going to be on the stack, I guess. There's 2 force negations. Those ones seem
Mm-hmm.
pretty good at fighting over as we talked about, because without the presence of violent outburst, force negation gets quite a bit better against the Rhinos deck. So
Right.
Garrick probably
Yeah.
wants to go towards that. You could consider Veil of Summer because there are force of negations in the Rhinos deck, and you expect disputes to come in. It's kind of a weird one to bring in, but might be worth it. And then past that, not really a lot here. Rest in peace, Dress Down. I don't think you want to have Days Undoing against Dispute Force. Past that, like Surgical, again, kind of narrow, not the best. But yeah, besides the forces and the veils, I don't see a lot here for Garrick. But I also don't think he needs a lot.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We saw how the deck can line up and will line up if you have the time to set up your hand, and that is what almost all of these cards allow them to do. And we saw a really clutch verdict in that first game. That's going to be one of the big cards, just as it always is for blue white control. But also the ring can be a big one. We saw a lot of subtlety and solitude back and forth play. Yeah, so you mentioned the interaction being on the stack. There's a lot of ways for these players to kind of establish what matters in the matchup, and then what's in play is kind of a function of that at the end. And maybe that's just one Rhino left over or one Narset Gyro Reach Sanitarium lock left over.
Absolutely. So let's see if we can go ahead and bring you game number 2 here. Garrick Alford on blue white control, Azorius control, Shandi on domain rhinos on the left. Shandi is going to be on the play, and we'll have to see if we can maybe have like some kind of leyline scion start. But even the leyline scion stuff is not as good against blue white because they do. I mean, Garrick has 3 supreme verdicts, so
Right.
yeah, not the best against Garrick.
Yeah, and it looks like a mulligan. for Shandy to start things off. Also, not much looking for Garrick. Looking like a keep over there. Can't quite parse what's in the hand, but uh, going to start up a card, which is good, especially when you're on the draw here, because the Domain Rhinos deck, if they have the turn 3 Cascade spell and they put Rhinos in play, you're not actually able to wrath that until a turn later. So that can be a big um, point when it comes to the play draw here. So you want the answers of Zoria's control, but you need the answers to line up in the right way. So as we get things started here, Shani puts a card on the bottom, just plays a land and passes the turn. No ley lines.
Yep, no ley line here. Maybe it's a little bit less likely on a mulligan to 6 because not only do you like if you're mulliganing, you're already down a card, and then if you have to keep the ley line in hand, it's almost like you're down 2 cards, and you kind of feel pressured into keeping 6 kind of quote unquote actual magic cards as opposed to 5 in a ley line. And on top of the fact that maybe Shandi realizes that that plan is not very good against Verdict anyways. So we get a little surveil action here for Shandi. What are we looking at? Do we like it? Top or bottom? We got a little
Looks like
George Jabor jump scare in the background there. I saw that. I saw you, George.
All right. Keeps it on top, it looks like. And we're going to do the same on the other end here. Both players just setting up, kind of settling in. This is a big match. You're going to have lots of players around watching. This is the top 8 on the line. They've, in round 9 here, been at it all day long. Ruling day of Magic, but well worth it. Looks like it was a Veil of Summer pickup by the Azorius control deck. Not a typo in the sideboard.
Yeah, no, I think that we talked about it during the sideboarding. I think that makes a little bit of sense, especially if you assume that the Rhino player is going to Mystical Dispute to fight over your counter spells, because a lot of Garrick's counter spells cost 2 mana, right?
Right.
So the Rhino player gets to be more mana efficient in the post-board games with Mystical Dispute, and you kind of want to match that mana efficiency because you're going to be fighting over like a 3 mana spell on turn 4, and you kind of need to be able to have that additional 1 mana answer.
All right, looks like the Endurance coming down here. That day it attacks and blocks, that's for sure.
Yeah, I kind of like Endurance in matchups like this. The ETB trigger, not going to do much 99% of the time, but what's really important is just having a flash threat, right? You don't want to play into the counter spells because you've lost those violent outbursts. You're much better, or you're much worse at fighting on your opponent's turn in terms of counter spells. So having additional flash threats to be able to like make your opponent like sort of quote unquote time walk them when they hold up mana, and you just don't play into their stuff.
Yeah, and it looks like Garrick drew Narset here, and Narset is pretty good on an empty board and pretty terrible when your opponent just has a random 3-power creature in play. So that is the benefit too that Endurance is going to provide here. So we'll see what Garrick actually wants to do to dig out of it, and the answer is going to be just play out Narset anyway.
Yeah, Narset holding up 1 mana. That Veil of Summer that we know is in hand. Shandi, maybe not expecting the Veil of Summer. It's also pretty good because, like, if you're the Rhinos player, you maybe wouldn't expect your opponent to bring in Veil, but and we're actually not even going to fight over it here for Garrick. That's very interesting to me.
Yeah, you said it. Very interesting choice, but okay. So that we just kind of trade those cards, move on to the next interaction. I think maybe I spot a ring over in Garrick's hand, maybe deciding that that's what we want to fight over. But Shandi must be feeling okay. The board's still clear. I've got a creature in play to attack. We're going to untap and see where we go from here. Footfalls ticking on down to 3. Be relevant eventually.
Yeah, and getting a glimpse at Garrick's hand, there's actually a second Narset, so it kind of makes sense to not fight. I didn't see the second Narset at first, but yeah, that Narset was kind of more of just a bait spell, just testing the waters, maybe get Shandy to use a spell on it, and yeah, it worked out. Garrick did get to trade that Narset for a card, so.
Well, yeah, especially since otherwise the Narset would cash in for a card and then the Endurance takes it down anyways. In this case, you actually get a card out of Shandy's hand, which seems like a pretty good trade all around when you're the Azorius control deck and you're protecting your life total and just trying to make your land drops and get things rolling. So here we go. Polluted Delta hitting the graveyard. Island coming into play. 10 life for Garrick, staring down the Endurance and 5 untapped mana from Shandy. How will Garrick choose to dig back into this one?
Yep, ring plus veil up, and this is like you called it. Yep, had the ring,
Yeah,
wanted to be able to fight over, and this veil of summer is going to be devastating here for Shandy.
it sure is.
Yeah,
Sean,
you
just a
will see
little
the shake
shake
of
of
the
the
head.
head.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's the one ring. Corbin, I'm a little
Yeah.
torn here. So I'm looking at, Garrick's mana base, and I see those nice basic planes and I see those nice fetch lands, but then
Yeah.
that Narset, I just can't get over it. I do like the lands though. Lands are nice.
Yeah, I'm not a white-bordered fan either. I'm not gonna lie. But more power to the people who have them. And hey, well, in this case, the Narset, uh, Shawnee didn't like it either. It countered it instantly, and it was just
True.
bait. So who knows what would have happened if it was a black-bordered Narset?
Yeah, I think Shandy was just so offended by the whiteboarded Narset that he's like, yeah, I don't know if it's right to counter this, but I just can't look at it.
Honestly, reasonable.
All right, we see Surveil, a basic land into the graveyard. Crashing Footfalls on 2. And remember, Garrick does have protection this turn. Is at 10 life. So, I've always been in this position where I play against the ring, and maybe you can kind of attest to this, but they get like the ring gets to the third counter and they're at 7 life, and it's like maybe they don't find another one, but usually they do find a second one.
All right, so Garrick just staring at a grip here, deciding how to try to close this thing out. Shondi is on the back foot, just kind of staring at the cards in hand. And gonna knows they're gonna need some help to dig out of this one with that ring just ticking up. And I guess hey, Garrick's down to 9 life. Got that going for him, but still a challenge.
Yeah, see Shandi head in hand, just really in a rough position. Garrick staring at 10 trillion cards in hand.
Yeah.
Got, the world is your oyster at this point. Shandi untap. Garrick says, we have effects in your upkeep. I have a response. We got Solitude, pitch the Kira. It's going to take care of the endurance.
Yeah, I think we might be in the final stages of this one here, no matter what the life totals tell you. Garrick is looking to be in full control, and Shawnee just trying to dig out. If you're trying to, I guess, figure out, plot your way out of this hole, it involves the crashing footfalls coming off suspend next turn, and there's another possible crashing footfalls. Who knows what'll hit?
Could do anything. Maybe,
Oh, crashing.
maybe the inevitable betrayals came in out of the sideboard. Take a
Alas, it
Solitude.
is only a crashing footfalls. But hey, that's a lot of power here for Shondi. If you're trying to find a way out, all it takes is somehow Garrick not having a board wipe, right? Because he's at 9 life. You're putting 10 power into play if all of this were to resolve. Now we know it's not going to, as a counter spell hits on the crashing footfalls.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're Shandi, that's, I guess you're maybe better off. I don't know. Yeah, I was gonna say, what would you rather trade the Crashing Footfalls for, a counterspell or a Wrath? And we know that Garrick didn't have the Wrath, just had the counterspell. But yeah, I think there's also another counterspell in hand. Picked up a Preordain. It's got a Subtlety. I see a Narset in hand. Just and a second copy of the One Ring. So kind of the thing that I had mentioned, where sometimes they just die to their own One Ring if they don't find a second one. That's less likely to happen now that Garrick has picked up that second copy of the ring.
Yeah, I think that was really the key one here. Is that ring was probably Shondi's last hope towards finding a way here. Was just hoping to take the final points away as Garrick stared at a hand of counter spells, right? But that is not, uh, unfortunately for Shondi, what was going on. And now Garrick with this force of negation and just a couple of steps away from possibly punching a ticket to a top 16 or maybe even top 8 finish, depending on how things break out here at the 10K Modern Showdown in Minneapolis. This NRG event has given us 9 amazing rounds of Modern today. And we're seeing it wrap up, and we've got a couple rounds of top 8 coming your way after this.
Yeah, I'm looking at standings, and just to give people an idea at home, we can kind of give you a little bit of a not a spoiler alert, but the first 3 tables did draw. So those, and we were not 100% sure if they were going to draw because there was some kind of weird breaker math going on. So if you figure the first 3 tables drew, table 4 we just watched, that's, the 7th spot, and then this is table 5. So there is a decent chance that one of these players the winner of this match will make it in. So, looking pretty good for Garrick here, potentially punching their way into a top 8. Look at Shandi just Shandi just seems like we're done here.
Yeah, you can feel it. 6-1-1 coming into this. This is going to be an incredible performance. 6-2-1 if it breaks that way. For Shandi, absolutely important, especially when we talk about these events over the course of the season. Right? There's a leaderboard. There's points. There's a lot on the line that is not just a single tournament. That said, it is always disappointing as you're watching the blue-white player put the blue-white finishing touches on an excruciatingly slow finish, as it feels like when you're staring it down in the final round like this.
Yeah, I think at this point it's the question of how many more turns does Shandi want to endure this? Oh, we're shocking. All right, we got some plays.
Okay, we got a Scion coming in.
4 mana Scion. We got
And
2 mana left over.
no problem, Garrick says. I'll let that one resolve.
I think we picked up a Supreme Verdict. And could be another Supreme Verdict, a Force Negation, perhaps a Preordain. Looks like it's going to be a Preordain.
I'll be honest, it looks like anything but a Preordain, but I do think you're right.
Well, yeah, that's true. It looks like a Charizard, to be fair.
Yeah. Well, okay, it looks like that is what happens here. Subtlety into the graveyard. Here comes the Supreme Verdict to clear the board away with Narset left over, with Gaia Reach Sanitarium left open. Lock back in place, and there it is. So yeah, Narset, of course, the passive ability saying each player can't, or each opponent can't draw more than one card a turn. So when you pair that with a discard effect like this, it can really mess with people's draw steps.
Yeah, the Gaia Reach Sanitarium Narset lock is kind of wild, especially once you get to no cards in hand, because you can go, draw step, draw for turn, activate the Sanitarium. You can't draw the second card, and then you just immediately discard the card that you drew. So, Shandi, we're getting to that point in the game, not 100% there, because there is one card in hand, but yeah, I mean, it's sort of all over but the crying at this point.
Yeah, Garrick, you can see, as knows where we're at, is working the way through this. Not going to activate that one ring. Not going to take any damage that could ultimately end this game in some way here.
And okay, we have Besage for the Gaia Reach Sanitarium. That can go ahead and take care of the lock, and we know that there's only one Gaia Reach Sanitarium, so I guess that's something. But
I mean, we saw it do its thing, and it was in fact somewhat relevant in each of the times it came up here. And then it's for land that you can just kind of work into your mana base and have as a free roll. Why not? Everything else is working for you if you're Garrick and you're about to move to 7-2 here in this tournament.
Yeah, and well, like I said, we'll have to see if Garrick's breakers are good enough to get there. I'm not sure if we. I'm not sure. I'm not actually sure. Maybe we can get confirmation from production. I'm not sure if we're even going to go to a break here. But we'll have to see.
Roll right into our top 8.
Yeah, depending on how we want to do this for production, we'll get you guys an update in here in just a second.
Looks like we'll take a short break before we come back for the top 8 here. But yeah, we're rolling right on through this thing. And we are almost about to witness Garrick Alford move to 7-2 with Azorius control. And then we will reveal that top 8 and get it played out for you. This has been an amazing round of Modern. We're going to have a diverse top 8 set of decks here. We've seen the top 8, not the top 8 rather, but the decks in contention for top 8. And it's going to be fun to watch. So meanwhile, until we're done here, it looks like we get one more Cascade trigger with the Shardless Agent, which is going to run into a counterspell for Crashing Footfalls.
Footfalls down. And Shandi just fighting, just chucking along. All right, he's finally tapped out. There we go. Shandi, thank you.
Well, Garrick Alford taking it down.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what the plan is, we're going to save the spoiler alert for top 8. So we'll get a top 8 graphic. We'll get everything set up for you guys, but looks like we have our top 8 just about ready to go. So don't go anywhere. We will be back here in just a moment. Stay tuned.